Welcome to Cicero and his work on duties. This is Dr. Catherine Abernathy, and today we will be talking about Marcus Tullius Cicero, the man in the mission. We will be first discussing who Cicero was, and then in a minute we'll be talking about what he thought. First of all, Cicero lived from 106 to 43 BC. He was a Roman orator, which means that he was a speaker. He was also a statesman or politician, and he was a philosopher. He did what we are doing today. Then, what did Cicero think? To a great extent, Cicero believed in natural law. Natural law shows us that the world's order indicates that there is also a moral order, or Cicero believed that there were certain things that were right and wrong, absolutely right and wrong. He also understood right and wrong to depend upon the individual. Different people have different talents and characters, so right and wrong actions will be different for each. He also believed that the right, or the good, and the expedient, what is useful or makes it the easiest for us to get what we need or want, never conflict. It is always most useful, though, to be good and to have an honorable reputation. So, now what about the work that we are reading? We're reading excerpts from a book called On Duties. Let's talk first about the right or the good, because he defines that or discusses it first. First of all, right versus wrong. In order to know what is right, one must know what is true. So early in the work you will notice that knowledge and understanding are important in understanding right versus wrong. Then one must also be concerned with justice and charity. Charity he also calls kindness or generosity. So we have to know what is true and be concerned with what justice and charity are. Cicero also sees all human beings as social creatures. This means that we are members of a country or a city or some kind of society, and as members of a society, even a family, we owe other members of that same community justice. We should behave justly toward them. We must do good to others and never do wrong. Also, in order to be a good person, being just, we must protect others from wrong if we are able. Next, kindness, also known as charity is also known as kindness or generosity. He gives us guidelines, though. We should not just be kind and generous and give everything away to the extent that we hurt ourselves. Also, he says when we are kind or generous, we must not harm the recipient. Just because someone asks for something, we shouldn't give it to them. Also, to give kindness or generosity or charity to another person, we must not exceed our means. So you should not give away so much that then you cannot feed your family, for example. Also, one must consider the recipient's worthiness before giving to that person. Now, that worthiness does not mean that the person is able to repay the gift or generosity. It is more in the realm of whether the person is a good person in terms of, are they just? Have they earned that kindness or charity in terms of their moral character? Will they use the charity that they are given in a good way? Then propriety. Sometimes today propriety sounds like something that has to do with upper class or someone who is socially impressive. But really what propriety means in our work is that one chooses to act appropriate to one's nature. That is, to do the right or to do the good is always appropriate. So, things that are just or prudent or temperate or courageous, those actions. If you are courageous, you are morally right. But those actions also have to be appropriate to the individual doing those things. So, what is right depends upon one's character. What is just, wise, temperate, or courageous for one is not for another. It is based on one's talents, such as strength or intellect. For some people, it would be wise and courageous to go into battle. For others, it would not be. For some people, it would be wise to offer to be a lawyer or a defendant for someone in a court of law. For others, that would not be wise or prudent because it would not help the person. So, you do base what is right action based upon one's character, but it does not mean that there is a variation in what is right. If the action is morally right, then it will be appropriate for that person's character, and in that case it will be right and either just or prudent or temperate or courageous. Now, we also want to keep in mind that Cicero is writing to his son. His son is about college age, probably, maybe high school age for our time. He might be high school age, but he is beginning to enter adulthood and pursuing what he's going to do for the rest of his life. What path will he choose? And so Cicero talks about how one should choose one's future. And he says one should choose according to natural ability. Again, the choice should be appropriate to the nature of the individual. Now he says that the choice of youth sometimes is uninformed, because when we are young, we sometimes don't see as clearly as when we're older. Youth are sometimes not as wise as those who have lived a little longer, and so sometimes the choice that a youth makes must later be changed, and that's fine. Sometimes the change can be done quickly, and sometimes it must be done over time. Further, he talks about duties according to one's role in society, in one's community. So, he sums up here at the end of this section talking about that young people should behave toward their elders in one way. Older people have a responsibility or owe the city another kind of action. So young people should look up to their elders and listen to their advice. Older people owe the city their wisdom. Magistrates or people who are ruling owe the city according to their role. Private individuals and foreign individuals also have their specific roles. The important thing here is not what those roles are, but that depending upon one's role in society and depending upon one's character and nature, one has a specific duty. One owes one's community and one's society particular actions and services, and one should consider one's ability in choosing those actions. In the next section, Cicero discusses expediency, and the main thing that we need to start with is understanding what expediency is and then what it is not. Expediency is simply the means to get or how to get what you want. And Cicero talks about different kinds of things that people want and need. Of course, we need food, we need housing, things like that. Food, shelter, clothing, those are things that we need. There are also things that we want. Better food, more money, a nicer house, those sorts of things. Now, he talks about how do we get those things. Some people think, he says, that the expedient or the good are two different things. The expedient is one thing and the good is another. Some think that what is expedient is not the same as what is good, and those people may choose the expedient over behaving in a way that is good. Cicero does not agree with this. In fact, he says the expedient is good and is always good. Now this does not mean then that if we go out and steal something because we want it, you can't just steal the chocolate ice cream from Walmart and say that that's good because you wanted it, so it was expedient just to run off with it. That is not what he's saying. In quite the opposite direction, he is arguing that purity of character is what we aim for and that we are born to be good. So, in pre-Christian times, for Cicero, purity of character wins favor with the gods. In his case, he's talking about the Roman gods. But even if we are not in ancient Rome and do not believe in the ancient Roman gods, we can also understand that people can most often help people, and that by helping people, we live in a better society. If everyone is just and charitable, we can live in a better society. Because people are just and kind, and follow the other virtues, justice, temperance, fortitude, courageous, things like that. If we are just and kind, we will have our needs and many wants met because we foster a stable, productive society. Also, because we are born to be good, it is expedient to be just and kind. Now, we still have the question of which should we choose, the useful or the right. Again, he talks about the expedient or the good. And he contrasts these, again, talking about actions that are useful to get what we want, and then actions that are right and are good. We may not get all of the little desires that we want, but he says the good is always the expedient for the good man. First, the morality of the act depends upon the situation. Now, he's clarifying here the mistake that many people make. The idea that, oh, if killing is a bad thing, why is it that in ancient Rome it's honorable to kill a tyrant? Or, it's always good to return something borrowed, we would assume. But what if we have borrowed, say, a gun from someone? This is the similar argument that Plato uses, although it's not a gun, of course, in ancient times. But one borrows a weapon of some kind, and the lender comes and requests it back. Well, if the person is in hysterics or is very mournful, of course it is not good to return something to them that could harm themselves or they could harm another person with. He also talks about breaking a promise. Oh, of course, we think breaking a promise is a bad thing. So if we have promised to give someone something, such as, some kind of a weapon, or perhaps we have money and we have promised to give that person money or something else, but we see when they come to ask for that promise to be fulfilled, we see that it will hurt the recipient, then it's not bad to break that promise. So, the thing to look at is, why is killing a tyrant a good thing? Because we are doing good for the city or the country. And then to return something borrowed at a time when the lender is not in a state to use it well, we're doing harm. So he says that this is where the morality of the act does depend on the situation, but it is the morality of the action. It does not mean that breaking promises can be bad. It's that there is a better good in breaking the promise because you are perhaps saving someone's life. So he's talking about that in terms of morality and the good act as opposed to the bad act. He's not talking about what is expedient in this case. However, he says moral wrong is not expedient. So moral wrong is never going to be a good thing. Nature and reason tell us that to be morally good is something that is expedient because it helps us become better people. Also, moral wrong, for instance, stealing or killing, any of the things that would be considered crimes or morally wrong, will lead to civic corruption. Moral wrongs will undermine the stability of a society, leave people mistrustful. And so he talks about, for the individual, he sees nature and reason indicating that if we are born to be good, moral wrong is not expedient. It hurts our souls. Moral wrong is also bad for the city or the nation. So instead, he says greatness of soul, courtesy, justice, all of these good things are in harmony with the nature of men born to be good. We are born to be morally upright, according to Cicero. So the best thing for a person is to be morally upright, to practice those virtues of justice, courage, fortitude, temperance, wisdom. The punishment then, he says, to reject the good, to reject those virtues, to pursue some self-interest, is to forget a punishment. And it is actually not to pursue self-interest in the long run. And he says that the punishment is not what we experience by going to jail. Instead, the punishment is the degradation of the individual soul. Now, he uses Plato's story of Gyges' ring as an example of one who could perhaps commit a crime and get away with it. He can become invisible and have an affair with the queen and then kill the king and take over the realm. He can do this because nobody sees him when he turns his ring inside. And so Cicero points out that he may not be punished by going to jail or being punished in a court of law, but instead he has punished himself because he has degraded his soul, which was born to be good. He is no longer good, so he has acted against his own self-interest. So getting away with it is not expedient. This does not get you what you really want. He gives us several examples in business, such as dishonesty to gain profits, but you may gain the profits, but you also gain a bad reputation. A bad reputation, according to Cicero, is not expedient. So, ultimately, he says, in summary here, that, number one, right and wrong are real judgments about things. We can say that some things are right and some things are wrong. And he argues that because we are born to choose the good, right is always expedient. It is the way to get what we really want. We do want to be good. We are social beings, and we owe our community duties. We owe it to our nation to be just, to be courageous. Now, these choices of being just and courageous, of course, depend upon who we are. Not everyone is born with a character or a physical nature, for example, to go into battle. Not everyone is born to argue in a court of law because one may not have the temperament. But because we are social beings, we should consider our role in society, according to Cicero, and act accordingly. We should be responsible to our communities or to our nation. Finally, reason and nature tell us that to be good is expedient for the individual and for society. This is a very brief and overarching view of Cicero's On Duties and the selection that we have in our ethics textbook. And I hope it gives you a general understanding of where he is going. Thank you.